I'm Sheridan, James Lunt, I'm a filmmaker, and I'd like to start by thanking Emma for the wonderful invitation to speak, especially because when people ask me about my graphic novel, I never know what to tell them, how to say anything about it. I usually say that it's a fairy tale, which it is, an original fairy tale, but that's not enough. To me, it's everything. It's my autobiography, it's my spirituality, it's my imagination, it's my philosophy. It's so big that having 20 minutes to talk about it for the first time with a captive audience is a delight. And it all began as a childhood game. This is me as this pixie, and then my dear friend Leon Pozhnikov, who's a painter in London, an artist, and he would play this giant and I would play this pixie, and they were just flights of childish imagination. And I loved these characters so much. They were they were who we are inside, in our minds and in our hearts, and I never forgot about them. So as time went on, it's become this graphic novel. I put these in to give a general impression of the book as these explosive flights of imagination. This is a witch kidnapping a child on this spiral staircase, and that's my friend Leon, the giant, escaping from a fisherman's cottage in a storm. I just wanted to make something intense and colourful, and I wanted it to, as I've said about it being everything, I wanted it to feel like everything. I wanted it to feel old and new and sophisticated and naive, and so I've been trying in every way to walk that fine line and capture all of those extremes. And this is my beloved Cornwall. Does anyone know where that is? This is a really special place for me. That's Kynance Cove. It does get quite busy in the summer. I think this must have been about 4:30 in the morning when I photographed that, and there was no one there. And I miss Cornwall so much, and this is where the story takes root. And so I set the opening chapters of the story in Cornwall. That's where Leon and I used to play. And I'm not the first, and I really won't be the last artist to be inspired by Cornwall. But it's more than just the place, it's the mythology as well of the place, which I'll go into if you take the next slide. These are stills from my animation series, retelling classic Cornish folklore. And I wanted to capture every aspect. Like Cornwall changes so much from summer to winter and night and day. So I used all different materials and all different techniques to try and create a portrait that would transmit something of those fascinating changes, those endless changes of the place. And you can see all these on YouTube. And we translated them into the Cornish language as well, which has been great. So they're available in English and Cornish now. I've studied mythology quite deeply from all over the world, but for me the Cornish mythology is the best, and I'll tell you why I think that. It's because of the archetypes. Mythology it's all archetypes. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the concept of archetypes here, but they're basically selves. They're characters that we play as we move through life. And the most distilled characters are archetypes. Mother is an archetype, witch is an archetype, fool is an archetype. And mythology deals exclusively in archetypes, and that's why the stories are so affecting and why we remember them for thousands of years. And my feeling is that if the archetypes of a certain set, like Greek mythology or Norse mythology, really speak to you, I think it's because they chime with your own personal inner archetypes. And for me, the Cornish mythology has archetypes that I've basically put these characters into my story. Here there are giants, like Cormoran and Bolster, they're famous Cornish giants. Pisky, which is like the pixie character that I used to play with Leon. Of course, the mermaids, so famous and so brilliantly done. I don't think there are better mermaid stories anywhere in the world. Smugglers and pirates. This is a real witch here. Her name was Nanny Boswell. She was a real Cornish witch. And saints. There are also ghosts. That's an important Cornish archetype. They turn up in the stories quite a lot. So there are two sides to archetypes as well. Witch is a great example. You could have like the sorceress in He-Man is a fine example of the good side, the positive side of a witch. All of He-Man's powers come from this majestic eagle woman who gifts him with all the powers with which he can defeat Skeletor. And then, of course, you've got the famous evil witches of Wizard of Oz, or you name it. Harry Potter has plenty of evil witches. I didn't know any of this when I was playing with my friend Leon. It's only looking back that you can recognise what you were doing. But that's what I was doing. I was matching my inner archetypes with the archetypes of Cornish mythology. And that makes the story, like, who are your inner selves? Which of yourselves are at war? Which of yourselves are in love? Which of yourselves have to die in order that other selves can live and flourish? That is what makes the bedrock of my story. Next slide. So then it came time I decided that I was going to write the story, and because I'm a filmmaker, I was thinking that this would be a movie. This is the first page of script. I wrote it as a script. I probably started typing in 2006. I spent 10 years writing the story, and as my life moved along, I put other elements of my life into the story. I lived in Spain, and there's plenty of genuine vistas. These are actual places, actual churches and things that have been folded into the story because the story continued happening within me as I was writing it over those 10 years. These were films I had in mind when I was writing the script. You might recognise some of them. I just wanted it to be as big as like a child's imagination, and these films are exactly that for me. They're untouchably good, and they're impossible. You can't believe these films were ever made. They completely blow your mind watching them, with the detail and the depth and the ambition and scale. I'll name a few. That's The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, Dr. Zhivago, Spirited Away, Crouching Tiger. This is Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I just adore. Some people consider it something of a turkey, but for me it's just a wonderful, wonderful film. Underground by Emir Kusturica, that's really mind-blowing considering, that was made in the former Yugoslavia just after the war had completely exploded the country, and what he got done under those conditions is just the stuff of legend. So all these films are rolling around in my head, and I wanted to capture something of those. I wanted to do something that impossible. These are my drawings. This demonstrates my drawing style, which I had been used to up until then. I love watercolours and crayons and inks and paper collage. This last one's a paper collage there. But I knew that the drawing style I'd been accustomed to would not be appropriate. That would not be fitting. I didn't know much about comics and graphic novels, but having a cursory glance at them, I became very aware that it was a print medium, and I really wanted to get into that, which I hadn't done much of, hadn't done any of really. I really liked the idea that the print was the work of art, the book you were buying, the comic you bought was the product. It wasn't, in fine art, prints are reproductions, and you just sign them all off, and there's an original somewhere that's worth more. And that isn't the case with graphics and comics and graphic novels. So although I had done a lot of drawing, I knew that I would have to try something new. I did some research about printmaking generally, and who were the great printmakers in history, and what did I admire about them? And three main printmakers were the inspiration in the graphic novel in the end. There's Hokusai, the famous Japanese printmaker. He's famous for this great wave and all these wonderful landscapes. William Blake, the romantic visionary poet. They were contemporaries, actually. They were born just a few years apart. And they had quite similar spiritual lives. They were both very devout people, but kind of heretical in their way. Certainly William Blake, he would have described himself as a devout Christian, but no priests or churchmen liked him at all because his ideas were so strange. He had his own idea about what those things meant. And then Hokusai was like Shinto. But beside all of these wonderful landscapes, he painted all kinds of fantastical ghost paintings and monsters. And he had a habit of drawing a lion every morning to bring him good luck. And then the third was I use tarot cards habitually. It's like a common practice, a common part of my day. And I was especially wanted to capture there's something archetypal and bold and statuesque about the tarot, as especially drawn by Pamela Coleman Smith, who really, she does not get nearly enough praise and recognition for her work. Her tarot deck is by far and away the most commonly used deck in the world today, and she invented all these, what's called the minor arcana, were just pip cards before, like you see in a poker deck, you just get 10 swords on a card, and she created these images to accompany that, to take them beyond. It's not just 5 cups, you've got this really fascinating image of this man turned away, and all the loss that card means, partial loss. He's still got 2 cups standing there, but she did speak with other spiritualists in creating these cards, and she did have some points of reference as well. There are a few examples in other decks, but for the most part, she really did something wonderful, and her legacy is so much greater than her name, which is a shame. Pamela Coleman Smith, wonderful illustrator. Next slide. So yeah, I didn't say it before, it turned into a graphic novel because as a film I knew, I make independent films and music videos, but there was no way of, certainly at this stage, of creating a huge epic movie, millions of dollars or whatever it would cost. So I kind of, I don't know when I got the idea that I should draw it, but I remember thinking that it was ridiculous because I think in the end it's something like 525 paintings altogether. They're all hand done, and I remember setting out thinking, am I really actually going to do that? And then I decided that I was actually going to do it. And having worked as an animator was great practice because there's so much donkey work and you just have to get on and do it. So I just decided I would get on and do it. Starts as these large drawings. I do like a crayon, basic drawing in crayon, and then inks and brush, and make a final image. Then I hop on the computer and I tidy it up, take out all the crayon and create this black and white image. And then I have that printed by my friend Neil, who print that onto watercolour paper. And on the next slide, you'll see...
Do you have the book with you?
I do have some copies of me, yeah.
If you've got a copy that one being handled, maybe you could just pass it around.
Sure, yeah, I'll do that.
Know what we're talking about.
It's 2 books, actually. This is the first. I knew it would be 2 books, and I wanted to get the first half printed just to see it and to get other people excited about it. So the second book's, it will be finished this summer. These are the watercolours. In the sunlight you can't really see, but the colours aren't quite, they don't pop really. The watercolours are nice. And I paint up to the edges like that. But then it goes on the computer again. So, like I said about the print being the main object, the images in the book actually are so much better than any of the handmade images, because I've been able to correct all the colours and make them really bright and intense. Also, you see here, it's all splash pages, which is a phrase I recently picked up from watching YouTube videos. But there's no panels in the pages. I think, as with the tarot cards, as with the books of William Blake, I wanted them to look like old books, and you don't get panels in old books. So it changes the pacing. There's lots of things you can't do, lots of quick, fast action and details. So the script did change quite a lot through the process of making the book, because there were certain things, quick things that happened or little things that happened that would have been impossible to demonstrate without panels, but I'd committed to it. So this is another Cornish scene, this train bridge. If you've been to Cornwall by train, you have to cross that bridge. And we'll go to the next slide. And then these are the images, the digital images, before they go to print, again with the sunlight, but I've made all the colours really firm, and I suppose this gives some idea of the story. All of the magical fairy tale people come to life. That's what's happening in the story. Things that people used to believe are real. Mermaids are real. Pan shows up. It's all a little bit trippy, and it signals something quite momentous and dreadful. It's like the way people used to be terrified by the appearance of comets in the sky. That's what's happening in the book. Everywhere you turn, some mad story is suddenly real. So in William Blake's books, he had these large borders. He printed them quite small, and I wanted my book to be, I didn't want it to be any bigger than A5, so it's that size. And he always had these big white borders around, so I did that as well as copying Blake there. And also these lovely handwritten, his poetry, all handwritten like that. That's how I decided to do the text in all the speech bubbles. This page is from his Songs of Innocence and Experience, which is just like a divine book. It's one of the most wonderful books ever written. And they guess that he might have sold something like between 20 and 30 copies of that in his life. And now it sells in the millions. It will never go out of print. He wasn't much appreciated in his own lifetime. Certainly not publicly. A lot of artists liked him, and a lot of other writers liked him, but he didn't have any public interest. People thought he was really weird. Next slide. So this is my last slide. This comes to the book in its final form. One thing, I guess, the second book's near completion now. I'm inking the final pages, and once it's done, nearly done and you get some distance from it, I just wanted to mention something about emergent symbols, which fascinates me. You put so much of what you think you're doing into a large project like that, but so much of what you don't realise you're doing goes into it too. And all big stories have emergent symbolism, which, like Star Wars, has amputations and precipices. It's not a Star Wars film without those two things, and I don't think anyone was thinking we've got to have amputations in our Star Wars films. But it's like a really key part of what happens in a fight between the Jedi and the Sith. It will always end in some kind of amputation. In my story, I think the emergent symbol is sight, vision, perception, perspective. There's lots of mirrors being shattered and eyes being blinded. There's a telescope that gets destroyed. It's something I need to think about more because I'm still wrapping up the project, but it seems to be about vision in some way that I wasn't expecting, which is really exciting to recognise, to look back and see that there was something going on there. So thank you so much for listening. That's my talk about the book, and thank you for your time.